Wonderful. Okay, so let's get this conversation started. Masa, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better. If
Okay,
you could
I just need to speak loudly.
that will be fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm trying to see where we are live on our Facebook page itself. So I'm gonna view us as, there we go. Okay, there it is. So I'm actually able to see the live conversation on my cell phone. So if anybody comments, has any questions or anything like that, we can answer from here, from Zoom, even though they're watching us on Facebook Live. That's kind of boss, isn't it?
This is
So much easier. Yeah. On Monday, for those who are on live, on Monday, we tried so hard to get on Facebook Live, and we were doing everything that Facebook was telling us to do, but somehow the both of us could not get on that, come together on that particular live video. It was only allowing for one or the other. But now we're using Zoom. Thank you, Zoom, for your fantastic Facebook streaming capabilities. Apparently you can stream to YouTube too. So many mind-blowing opportunities for us to be able to connect to folks. So I'm really, really excited. There's somebody called Masashi Charles Mochizuki who's watching the live video.
So, I also wanted to test and see, like, I was like, come on.
Yeah. So that way, like both of us can be also looking for those comments so we don't miss anybody, right? So let's get started. Today we wanted to, this is our first hard conversations on Facebook Live, right? So it's a different set almost. It's a different setting completely, because prior to this, it was a private conversation between the two of us that we would then at a later time share with people. So it's not actually direct interaction that is happening, right? Well, yes, now it is way more direct. It's very much real time. And so with that, I just wanted to check in and see, are there anything about our community agreements that we would want to change, we would want to update?
I think the conversation that we had even in private, I feel like to me it's the same. It's similar. It's the same.
Okay.
So,
all right. So you're feeling that same vibe.
Yeah. For you?
With it. Yeah, I think if this was our first hard conversations and we were going directly live, I think maybe community agreements may have looked a little bit differently, and provided for a little bit more safety on that front. But having done at least a few of them, I feel pretty good about it. Like I'm ready to engage in the hard conversation, as well as with anyone who has any questions or wants to participate in any way, shape, or form.
Awesome.
Okay, so today's hard conversation, we are going to be talking about citizenship, right? An incredibly important and relevant topic. Yes, more so at this time because of the political nature of it. Citizenship, I think, has always been political, right? But because of the heightened political nature of it and the amount of xenophobia that has increased in these last 4 years, the very particular attack on undocumented humans and humans who are not American citizens, even American citizens who are not born here, right? Naturalized citizens. And so there's definitely a high level of relevance to it, yes. And at the same time, citizenship has always been relevant, right? Even though it is significantly polarized now, it has always been a necessary, relevant conversation, because we are talking about who is allowed to occupy a particular space and how. And that's pretty systemic overall, right? Who is allowed to occupy a certain space and how? In every single room, every single space, every single restaurant, theater, so on and so forth, that is occupied, there's always that question of who can be in that space and who cannot. And so I think it's a much larger narrative on that front, right? And it's called citizenship. But we are always having these conversations on who can occupy that space. So with that said, I'm going to throw out a question, as we usually do, just keep it broad. What does citizenship mean to you, right? And what has that looked like for you? What are some thoughts in terms of thinking about your own citizenship, not just now, but in general, that journey of citizenship?
Um, so I think for me, I think I'm kind of like taking it similar to some of the questions that, some of the other conversations about identity that we've had, and kind of like, when did I become aware, or uh, when did I notice this kind of a thing? Because obviously I think like, um, when I was younger, I don't think like the concept, like citizenship, is very, like you said, it's very political. Like it's very constructed. It's very process oriented. It's very much like it's documentation. It's paperwork. It's like all those things. That was not something that was um, something that for me as a child, as a kid, that I really thought about. And a lot of that was because that paperwork piece of it, I didn't have to worry about, right? Like my mom took care of it, my dad took, my parents took care of all those things. I had those privileges, like I had kind of that automatic U.S. citizenship, that dual
You're a
citizenship.
naturalized citizen, right?
Um, I don't know what the exact term is. I think I have citizenship from birth,
Were you born?
because so I was born in Japan, but because there's some weird, this is kind of like the thing where like I'm less educated on a lot of these things, and so this might be something where if there's folks who are watching who know more information, like for example, um, um, I think you remember Corinna, like so Corinna was my partner, my previous partner. Um, she was born in Mexico, um, and but she did not have citizenship in the United States, and she
One quick
actually,
question.
yeah,
Is it okay for you to share the story?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Um, so she did, she became a citizen, after the fact. And so we had some conversations around like kind of like, what does this mean? Like, because it's like, and we were like very confused about like, what is this process? Because it was like something that, again, it's our parents. It was because of our parents, like what they did or didn't do, or like whatever the process was. It was very, very confusing, and we were trying to figure it out and like have conversations around it. And like my experience and her experience were very, very different as a result of that, right? Even though we came to the States around the same age, right? We both came to the States around 6, 7, 8 years old. But in terms of our citizenship, I had automatic citizenship basically from birth. Like I had dual citizenship and everything. And there was this process that apparently had to be gone through that allowed for me to have that. And then at a certain point, once I was a certain age, I had to choose. So I chose US citizenship. And I remember, having that conversation at one point with my mom about like, all right, Masi, like it's getting to that time. And like, I hadn't really thought about it, but she was, saying like, okay, like you gotta choose at some point now. Um, and but I think like that's something that definitely like I never really thought about until I was, again, a lot older, and I was getting to that point where um, I had to think about my own citizenship in terms of choosing. And then that question had never come up for me before. It wasn't until I was about 20 years old um, that I had to really like decide and think about like, okay, like what space, like exactly what you said, what space am I going to choose to, and again, I have that choice, but to choose to say, okay, I have the privilege of occupying the space without being questioned about it. So that was, I think, I don't know if that kind of gives a broad.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's so interesting. So you had dual citizenship until you got to a certain age, and then at a certain age you had to choose, right? That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
For
So
Corinna, how was it? When did she also apply for I mean, did her parents apply for citizenship when she was younger, or did she apply when she was adult?
And again, this was like a weird thing where her brother, who lives in Mexico, travels to the States, but lives in Mexico. He actually has U.S. citizenship.
Okay.
Because of their mom, who's a U.S. citizen. Okay. But she did not. So there was this weird thing where she was living in the States, did not have citizenship, could not vote, right? There's like literally she did not vote in the 2016 election. She could not. And then we had her brother who lives in Mexico, but because of this weird, again, it's like this weird thing with like it's so bureaucratic. Like it's a weird thing. It's paper documents. It's like but he was able to actually vote in the 2016 election. So it was like a weird thing of like the citizenship question of like, what is this really like? It's so much more complicated than I ever thought,
You don't have details. Like you don't know if she applied for citizenship as an adult. You don't know.
She did. Yeah, she had a green card and she applied and she became a citizen. I was there with her for the
swearing
naturalization. Yeah,
naturalization ceremony. Swearing in. What?
Swearing in. Yeah.
You're now American.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of was. Like it was very like, but it was also like, and again, it was like very consistent with a lot of other sort of citizenship naturalization kind of processes, as very diverse group of people, like very very strong sense of community, like again, like because everyone is sort of like going through a process to get there. And I think that's another thing too, is like seeing how when you have like there's a lot of things that we take for granted, and I definitely take for granted, right? Because like I didn't, again, this was all dealt with by my mom and with my parents, and like I didn't have to think about or worry about any of this. And so there's a certain part that I'm just like, sorry, this is a little bit of a tangent, but like I keep thinking of like this one time I went to like this event, this party, a whole bunch of adults. I was the youngest person there, as is, and so there's a lot of adultism that exists in that space as well. And so there was this very, very tall white man who approached me, and of course he was trying to make a racist joke about my name, and making comments of, like trying to make my name into a slavery joke, which I was like, sorry, I do not find slavery funny. So that was like his opener. So this was going to be a great conversation. Wow. I knew from the beginning. But basically he started, because of my name and because like, there's kind of an assumption, or, in my case, correct, that I'm not necessarily from this country originally. And so like, he started talking to me about immigration. And there was this kind of, again, this whole thing of like, well, you came the right way, right? Like that line of like, there is a proper process, and like, you did it the right way. And it was one of those things where I'm like, but I didn't actually, like, I didn't really do anything. Like, I just happened, like, it was just a happenstance, like, it just, like, there wasn't, first of all, for me personally, I'm like, if some folks, have that feeling of like, I went through a hard and arduous process, and like, there is some feelings around that. I'm like, I'm not going to take that experience away from you and that perspective away from you. But from my personal perspective, I'm like, no, like I legit like just got like really lucky and just had like, yeah, like I am simultaneously somebody who is not from this country. And at the same time, I have the absolute, just given to me on a silver platter of like, yeah, you get to, take for granted that you belong here, and nobody's going to question you on that. And like, that's something that I'm like, and I can't, from that perspective of, because of that piece from me and my experience with that, I'm like, who am I to judge or deny or anybody else's place in the world in terms of where they belong or where they are not supposed to be? When I'm like, there's nothing that I have, like, I literally cannot, right? Like, I don't know. That was just something that I was like struggling with, not struggling with, but like, I was like trying to convey to him that like you might have come across other people who might say or believe some of these things. And for me personally, because of my experiences, like I cannot, I don't have any, this is purely privilege. This is like nothing else, you know, like there is no, I can't justify anything about, from the perspective that you're talking about, you know? And especially thinking about these complex relationships and experiences that other people have, where folks who were born here, their families were not from here and were on like a work visa. And again, like these are all just very complicated things, and we're not even getting into, status as undocumented. But even within documentation, it's such a complicated process, even within the realm of documentation and visas and like green cards and all these things, that I've had friends who were born here in the States, but their entire family, including their older sister by like a year, was born in a different country. And so as a result, the visa expired, family had to go back to their country of origin. And literally it's like, I don't speak the language. I don't know anybody there. I'm in my senior year of high school. And we know from right now with COVID, it's like, that's a pivotal time. And it's like, it sucks to like have to miss your graduation and like, give up a lot of like key kind of milestones. So she ended up staying here in the States by herself. Her entire family left and she stayed with a friend without her family so that she could stay here in the States. But like there's like those kinds of choices that people have to make, and it's like I've never had to make those choices. So that was that. I think those kinds of like starting to hear people's stories as I was I think like toward the end of high school, and like when I started to when I became more aware of my own decision that I had to make, I think that's when I really started to think a little bit more seriously about the complexities of citizenship. And even with that, I'm still super confused, and it's super complicated, and there's so many different unique experiences that people have with that. So yeah, that's kind of my journey, if that answers that. Basically.
Right. No, absolutely. Can we reroute back a little bit? I'm curious, because I think it's important, if you are able, right? Like if we have the information, then I think there is an importance in sharing that information about the complexities and the bureaucracy of immigration, of citizenship, right? And then I want to go back to talking more about citizenship itself, not immigration.
Yeah.
Okay. So like I hear what you're saying with Corinna and her brother, right? Like I hear what you're saying about it. It's so weird. It's complicated. Yes, it is, but there's also a structure to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not random.
Yeah.
It is very targeted. It's very specific how these rules are put into play. So it's not the H-1B visa lottery. You know what I mean? Where it's like if you're lucky, then you get it. It's not like that. Which is why I'm asking specific questions about it, because it's important to recognize why two siblings would have two very different sets of immigration experiences, right? Yeah. So Corinna had a green card, applied for her citizenship as an adult, right? Her brother lives in Mexico, but was still a US citizen. How? Because they applied for him as a child? Do you know?
I think so. I think it was because, and so similarly to me, I had dual citizenship because my mother was a US citizen. And there's some sort of paperwork, my understanding, and again, this is something where definitely fact check on this. But I think that there's like certain processes that you go through at a certain point and paperwork that you fill out, and then it for U.S. citizens who are living abroad, so that if they have children, then those children are.
So his mom was American.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Right. That's.
Yes, I know. Yes, so that is that is a key piece of information. Yes.
Right. As to like what was it that made him have that access here?
So in a lot of ways, he and I have a similar experience, right? In that for the first 7 years of my life, I lived in Japan, but I still had U.S. citizenship at that time.
Right. Right. He might not have.
I'm pretty sure he did.
He did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he did throughout, and then it was just because of other circumstances, I think that, and again, there's intersection of identities and different circumstances, life circumstances.
Well, I'm also thinking about, did he have dual citizenship from the time he was born, like you did? You know what I mean? Like, is there? Because not everybody can have dual citizenship.
Yeah.
You know, so did he have dual citizenship, or did he only have American citizenship? But because of the rules that America has with Mexico, was he able to still live in Mexico? You know what I mean? Like he could have also like been on a green card and, you know, all of that until he got citizenship, or been a US citizen and been living in Mexico, like legit. It's just a lot. It's easier to live in other spaces being a US citizen than it is to live, be non-US and then living here. You know, like it's it's a pretty, the inverse proportion is pretty, you know, varied, right? Exponentially varied, I think. And so that could have also been a possibility. So like, that's what I'm just thinking about, you know, because his mom was American, does that automatically give him dual citizenship? And I'm really tentative on that.
Yeah, it's not, I definitely don't think it's completely automatic. For sure.
Right.
Because otherwise we wouldn't have different outcomes, right? Like you said, there is a process, or there's some structure that it's within.
Right. Cool. That was awesome. Within
sorry, go ahead.
Family structure too, though, right? There are different immigration levels.
Say that one more time.
Within your family structure too, there are different immigration levels.
Yes.
Or different citizenship level, residency levels.
Yes.
Currently.
Yeah. My dad is on a green card. His wife is in the process of getting her green card. He got remarried. Hey, congratulations, Dad.
Hey.
I have a stepmom. she's real cool. But yeah, so that it has all that's also been a thing.
Is that a concern?
It has been at different times. He and I are fairly similar. I'm very similar to him. We are sometimes a bit absent-minded. Sometimes we don't prioritize taking care of the things that are important to us, and so and there's other, you know, extenuating circumstances. It's also really, really expensive, right? Green cards and like renewing and everything like that. Like when you don't have the money, right? It's just like literally, it's just, you know, it's like basically like $1,000, you know, that you're like, oh, like do you just happen to have an extra $1,000 when the time comes when you have to renew? And I have a fairly strong feeling that was, you know, especially since my dad doesn't have health insurance, like he was definitely keeping some things from, like he literally, like my dad, I think I told you this before, like he got assaulted and he didn't tell me, right? Like it took his wife telling me that, oh yeah, your dad got assaulted, like, you know, like da, 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 da. I'm like, wait, what? I was just on the phone with him for half an hour. He did not tell me this. So he's definitely like tries to take care of things on his own and like not burden other people, or, you know, like to like worry me and things like that. So definitely like he's had that with like health and, you know, stuff like that, but I think also with finances and like with money. And so I know at one point his green card status was something that was in a predicament where I don't know if this was maybe a similar situation where something happened and he did not tell me something potentially like an assault happened that I did not know about, but he did not have basically, like, there was a time when I was not certain about his green card status. I don't know exactly, and I don't necessarily want to go into super details and
of course.
On that, but at the same time, like, it was like definitely a concern of like, is this going to be a thing, and will I be able to, you know, using the privilege that I have of economic privilege to, you know, spend a few $100 to go visit my dad with a flight, is that not going to be able to happen anymore because he will no longer be here. So,
is he good now?
He is good now, yeah.
Okay.
So that is definitely something that is a huge relief, and stepmom killing the game,
right?
Making sure that all the things are.
Green card is one thing, right? But citizenship, I think, for immigrants is a whole other ballgame altogether. Mm-hmm. There's also, I think, there's an emotional component that tracks with having to get citizenship, because dual citizenship is not available to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there is a giving up of something in order to acquire something else.
Speaking of, can you speak to that a little bit? Because I know we want to talk about citizenship and then like kind of separating that a little bit from immigration, but like I know that I feel like we've had this conversation about citizenship before a little bit, and I think that speaks directly to that kind of this having to choose and having to give up something, and like it's not as simple as just like, oh, why don't you just have this? You know, why don't you just have citizenship? Why don't you just get it? And it's not that simple. Can you speak to that in terms of your own experience?
Wait, what? So I'm sorry, I didn't understand the last part of what you said. What do you mean by citizenship?
Like, I think that piece of what you said of having to give up something, that it's not as simple as, oh, I want this, I'll just get it. But like, there is a choice, there is a process, there is a lot of deliberation that has to go into these things. And I think that that's something that we've talked a little bit about in terms of your own experience with citizenship, or, you know, like, do you want citizenship? Or what would you have to give up? And, you know, things like that, in terms of if that's something that you are willing to speak to.
I think citizenship is, I don't even think like, yes, I was going to talk about the last piece of it to see if you and your dad had any conversations about it, mm-hmm. but I don't think like the last piece of it is even something that is anywhere close to the forefront of anyone's mind when we're thinking about citizenship, right? Mm. I think everybody assumes, but this is America, why wouldn't you want citizenship here? Mm-hmm. You know, and that it is just so easily gettable. Like, you go to the DMV and you get a license. Mm-hmm. But until you're in a situation where you have to provide more documentation than everybody else, even to get that license, you know, you can never truly understand how complicated the process is to get citizenship. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, it's not like you go to the post office and submit an application for a passport. And even that is so simple, right? Like, you go to the post office and submit an application for a passport. If my passport has to get renewed, I either have to go back to India or I have to send my passport to Houston, right? To the Indian consulate in Houston, in Texas, for me to get my passport renewed. Despite the fact that there's an Indian consulate in Miami, I can't send it there. I have to send it to the one in Texas. So it's so ridiculous. If you cannot send your passport for renewal to a consulate in the state that you reside, it has to go to another state. I have no idea why that's the way it works, but that's the way it works, right? And then you will get your passport back in 45 days. That's a lot of time.
That's a long time.
And it's anxiety provoking like nobody's business.
Because like, what if they lose your passport and you don't have your passport?
Yeah. You know, and as someone who has lost my passport before, because I got robbed in Spain, as someone who has lost my passport before, it's a very like, there's processes, of course, in place to get it back. There's no doubt about that. You know, like, you can get your passport reissued. There's no one's going to kick you out of the country because you don't have your passport. It's not like, I lost my passport. Oh, cool, get out. It's not like that. You know, there are processes put in place to make sure that to an extent you can be okay. And this is mad privilege speaking, right? Assuming that you have the money to spend to get your passport reissued, like all of these other things that come into play. And then you got to send it by FedEx. It's not like you can choose a cheaper option to send it by. The consulates also have specific requirements as to what postal service that you can actually use. You know, so there's all of these things that come into play, but it is very, very nerve-wracking to have to do that, you know? So even in having to make those basic choices, right? Even in having to think about like how to go through that process, it is such a complicated, it's just such a complicated structure. So let's say it like this. I'm 36 years old now, right? I am on an H-1B visa, which is a work permit, yeah? I've been on this work permit. Well, let's not get into that. After school, right? After getting on an F1 visa, yes, the following visas that I have had have been since the year 2015. Let's just go with that, right? 2015 to 2020. Yes, it's only been 5 years, yeah? But I'm 36 now. If I had to file for my green card, I've been with CDB for 4 years. If I had to file for my green card with Community Tampa Bay, for example, as the law stands now, right? Presuming no changes, it would take me roughly about 8 to 10 years to get my green card with CTB. The easiest way to get a green card is, Masa, I thought you froze because you were so still for so long.
No, sorry, that was just my face going, but.
It would take about 8 to 10 years for me to get that green card. Okay.
Yeah.
Which again, like, we could not have applied for the green card any significantly earlier because I still had to get that H-1B processed. You can't just go directly from an F1 to a green card. You can under other circumstances, not under these circumstances, right? And so another 8 to 10 years. And anywhere in between those 8 to 10 years, if I decide to leave Community Tampa Bay and go to another job, I have to start the process all over again. It doesn't transfer. Okay, until I'm in the last stage, that there are 3 stages. So until I'm in the last stage of that green card application, when I'm in that last stage, I can move to another organization. But that last stage is only the last 2 years of that entire 8 to 10 year period. You know what I'm saying? So then I'm probably going to get my green, let's say we applied today with CTV for my green card, right? This is why I opted not to apply with CTV for my green card either, okay? I'm a huge fan of commitment. I do not do obligation, right? So I'm being tied down purposefully is like not my thing. And you know how my relationship with CTV is. Like we have an amazing relationship. I absolutely love all the support that I get with the organization. And yet there's a limit, right? And there are certain boundaries that I have to draw. And it might be to my detriment, but whatever. It's just rooted in values, you know. It's just rooted in values. So that's important to me. So let's say I did apply for my green card with CTB now, this year, 2020. 2030, I'll get my green card, or 2028. I'm 36 now. I'll be, do the math, 46 when I get my green card with CTB. I mean, come on, man. You know, that's like a significant chunk of time. Right? So it's so impractical, and it's just so tedious, you know, and they're still processing applications from 2017 or something like that. Right? So that's why that long of a wait, you know, but that's expected. It's not going to change anytime soon. You know, so it's such a significant process. And then after that, once you get your green card, then you're going to apply for your citizenship. Again, such a huge span of time before that actually happens. Right? I will say this though, one thing that I'm just touching upon like other pieces that you touched upon. I don't always face, you have a very distinct name, yes? And so despite the fact that you are a US citizen, people make the assumptions about you because of your name, right? For me, more often than not, because I'm Indian and I look the way that I, because, you know, like I have tattoos and piercings and I'm masculine and all that, very evidently queer. Unless like my accent comes out, most people do not immediately go to the idea that I'm not a citizen. They assume that her parents must be from somewhere else. Yeah, of course her parents are Indian, but she must be born and raised in the States. You know what I mean? And not just Americans, like Indians think that of me too. Right? Also, Sam, like, could that name be any more generic? Right? Powerful, but generic, you know? So, so it's just, I just thought like that juxtaposition was interesting with that, you know? The idea of citizenship though, I want to explore that piece a little bit more, not just immigration. Why did you make the choice of America and not Japan?
I think because by, I want to say by the time I made that choice, I had established community here. I think there was always that, there was always like a piece of me that was like, eventually I want to like go back to Japan and like, live in Japan kind of a thing. Now I think it's definitely something where I'm like, I would love to temporarily live there, like go visit, you know, like reconnect kind of a thing. But definitely like my mom was here, my dad was here. Community Tampa Bay, like, you know, even at the time I was already, you know, feeling like connected to any town, and I was going to school here, like just a lot of different things. And then also in terms of language, like, let's be real, my language ability, I would need to hardcore study Japanese in order to be able to go there. So definitely like a combination of like, I think it definitely from a combination of like from a practical perspective, is like, no, like it makes more sense for me to like live here, just in general. And then from like another perspective, I felt like kind of more emotionally, I felt more emotionally tied to like physically to here and more invested here. So like, to me, it was very important for me to be able to vote. Because I was like, I want to be able to have some small influence, right, politically and through my vote. And I was like, again, kind of coming from a little bit of the emotional, but then also the practical. Then again, too, of like Japanese politics, I'm not as familiar with. So you know, definitely like from that standpoint, yeah, I think I ended up choosing citizenship here.
What's that?
I ended up choosing U.S. citizenship.
Heard. Yeah. Well, we are about 5 minutes.
Oh shoot! Dang, this went by fast.
Yeah. Any last reflections you want to share?
We barely got in. I feel like we barely got into it.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
For what?
Yeah, yeah. There's so much. I feel like it's making me think of wanting to do some more research and look up more information for sure.
Right.
Also, even in what you're sharing, I'm definitely making some connections to different processes as you're talking about, like, again, the different restrictions and processes, and there is a lot that goes into it. So.
Yes, I'm aware.
Yeah. So I'm like, I want to be a little bit more aware of that, so I'm not just kind of like finding out as it's happening to other people and as they're sharing, but like be able to anticipate a little bit better to support.
For certain.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for this conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you for leading it and for all the insights.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still going on Facebook Live, so it's probably gonna, I think we are definitely at the end of what's happening on the Facebook Live page. Cool. Yeah. So we've had a lot of folks watch. I really hope y'all enjoyed this conversation. We've got some affirmations. Tammy says, thank you for sharing, Masa. This is difficult. Susan says, thank you both. Thank you, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. Really appreciate y'all being here. We'll be back on Monday again at noon. We are undecided yet as to what we will be talking about, but we will certainly share prior what the conversation will be about. So thank you, everybody, for being here. All right.